Now, in this episode, we're going to take you on a journey profiling the life and crimes of William Devin Howell, the most prolific serial killer in Connecticut history. And I want to welcome in my co-host, Brandy Diamond. And Brandy, we all know that these killers have unusual behaviors, to say the least. But this homicidal maniac killed over a half dozen people and buried them in a wooded area that he referred to as his garden.
John, how many times have we seen this? Serial killers burying their victims right in the backyard. Do they want to be able to see what they've done? I'm really interested to find out more about William Howell. And unfortunately, like you said, it wasn't vegetables that he was growing in his garden.
Yeah, and this wasn't a backyard garden like we've talked about with some other serial killers, where officers finally go in to the house and start digging around the backyard and digging up, bodies and bones. This he called his garden because that's where he would dump the girls and put them in shallow graves. It was behind a strip shopping mall, and no one discovered it for years.
That's wild. That is wild. Behind a strip shopping mall?
Yes,
Oh my
yes, a wooded
God.
area. We'll get in. I'll tell you all about it later, but let's get into William Devin Howell.
Okay, John, so today we are discussing serial killer William Devin Howell, born February 11th, 1970 in Hampton, Virginia. Like you mentioned, this is an American serial killer, the most prolific serial killer in Connecticut history. He was convicted of murdering 7 women during a 10-month spree in 2003. And then in 2017, while already serving that 15-year prison sentence for manslaughter, he was sentenced to 6 consecutive life sentences, 360 years in prison, John. So he's currently institutionalized. So what are we going to know about William Howell? What are we going to talk about first?
What jumps out at me, Brandy, is you said that he killed 7 women in a 10-month period. Wow. That is a lot of murder in a very short period of time. And then did he just stop? What happened? Again, we don't see these serial killers stopping or taking a pause, especially after something as horrific as 7 women in 10 months. That's really aggressive. So it's going to be interesting to kind of dive in here. But when we look into his background, we actually see another anomaly, just like last week in our last episode. This serial killer came from a good family and a stable home. And, so anytime we see that, we're like, wow, how, where did this guy take a left turn? And I think with him, he had a falling out with some of his family members, and I think it was over his drug use. He started drug abuse at a very early age and got into crack cocaine. He was arrested multiple times for drug-related crimes, larceny, burglary, and, those usually go together.
Right.
When we start seeing young people getting arrested for drugs, we almost always see they're trying to feed their habit through larceny, burglary, theft, all kinds of other offenses because they don't care about committing the crime. They just want to get high, and what they're going to do whatever it takes to get the funds to do that.
So we see a good family, stable home, like you said. Usually we see something in the background that possibly triggers this behavior later on. But we know the drug abuse starts early, the crimes start early. And now, is this going to continue into his adult life, John?
Yeah, he actually becomes a drifter and kind of transient. And we see him moving around Florida, Georgia, New Jersey, Virginia, Connecticut. So we see him moving through multiple states, and he's arrested numerous times for not only drug-related offenses, but now we're seeing him arrested for soliciting prostitution.
Okay.
So the crimes are expanding. The crimes are now turning into sex crimes. And he's being arrested in Florida, Georgia, New Jersey, and Virginia. So we're starting to see this pattern of behavior here that it's not just the drugs, it's now sex. And we see he's evolving, right?
Yes.
He's evolving as a criminal. We don't see any serial killer behavior yet,
Right.
but through this kind of young adult period, he was certainly evolving as a criminal. He lived out of his 1985 dark blue Ford Econoline van. I don't know if you can picture that, Brandy, but unfortunately, I can.
John, my father actually owned one of these when I lived in Ventura, California, and the back seat actually folded out into a bed. So I am very familiar with the 80s and 90s vans.
There you go. But I bet your dad didn't call his the murder mobile.
Let's hope not. At least not in front of at least not in front of the children. At least not in front of the children.
Yeah, no, actually he called it the murder mobile, and that's where he ended up committing many of his horrific acts. And we're going to talk about that later. But his, prior criminal history, the drug abuse, the personality traits, the sexual deviance, all lead us to obviously very antisocial behavior.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, he moves back to Connecticut in the early 2000s. So he's been on the road for a couple of years. He's been arrested in numerous states, arrested for numerous crimes, both sexual and theft type offenses. And now he's working odd jobs, starts mowing lawns in Connecticut, and even paints the side of his van so that he can get business, and tries to turn his odd job lawn mowing business into an actual service, which he does to some degree. So when we start looking at, his young life and profiling it, substance abuser, we're certainly checking that box. Abusive family members. No, his family was stable, a good family. We don't know about mental health issues, but we certainly do know about the drug abuse, right?
Right.
And so that is an obvious trait. He is charismatic to the point where he's approaching these women. He's soliciting sex from them. He's out buying drugs. We certainly see that. Don't see anything on the animal abuse side, at least anything we know. But, a fascination with sexual deviance, including pornography. And yes, a criminal history, a fairly extensive criminal history, even if it's just kind of low level, petty level, drug, larceny, theft crimes that we see. So he ends up checking a bunch of those boxes for us, Brandy.
Yeah. One other thing I wanted to, do you think he's now going back to his, I don't want to call it safe space, but where he's going to end up committing these crimes, right? He's going back to familiarity, the area he's from after traveling around. So do you think he's now thinking and progressing to this? Do you think he's getting settled into some of this? What are your thoughts on him moving back?
No, I think you're exactly right. I think, we see that these serial killers have their comfort zones. That's why we do geographic profiling. That's what I did with the serial killer that I caught. And I think you're exactly right. I think he's been on the road. I think he's been in and out of jail, picking up prostitutes, doing drugs. Now he wants to go back to the New Britain, Connecticut area where he's from. And I think he wants to progress in his criminal career. And I think the way that he feels he can progress is if he's in his comfort zone. And I don't care if we're talking about Jack the Ripper or Ted Bundy or Gacy or any of the others. They all seem to have a comfort zone. Even Israel Keys, if you believe he committed all of those crimes, he had comfort zones where he placed those kill kits. And certainly the Highway Strangler, just on and on. We can go back. Arsenic Annie, killed in her area. But I think most of these killers, the vast majority of them, have a comfort zone. And I think he was looking for it. And unfortunately for these women, he found it.
Yeah. In fact, his first victim, John, Melissa Ruth Kimmelini, white female, 29 years old, mother of two from Seymour. She went missing on January 1st, 2003. Now, she had been recently living in the Waterbury area and was last seen in that area with two men. She was known to have a substance abuse problem. She would regularly disappear for long periods of time into prostitution. John, her body was discovered buried behind a New Britain shopping center and was identified in 2015. I'm going to assume, John, this is the garden you spoke about.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's the garden. But look at that gap, Brandy.
Yeah.
2003.
12 years.
And her body was not discovered for over a decade.
Wow.
And when it was discovered, the entire garden was uncovered and a lot of bodies were discovered. But yeah, she's one of these people. We call them soft targets, victims, out there in society, potential victims, living on the edge, drug user, disappearing for long periods of time. Who's going to miss her?
Right.
How long is it going to take them to miss her? So this is one of those marginalized folks that we see with many, many serial killers. And you got to remember, this is this guy's lifestyle.
Right.
He has been a drug abuser and drug user for years. He's been known to pick up prostitutes for years and arrested for it. So this is kind of his wheelhouse. So I think you were right on the mark when you said he went back to where he feels most comfortable to start really committing the crimes that he wanted to commit, which unfortunately was kidnapping, rape, and murder.
Yeah, and John, it's unfortunate we see all these, I don't want to say like misdemeanor charges. I'm not sure if any of those were actually felonies when he was arrested, but again, missed opportunity to keep this guy behind bars and not be able to, move around and then ultimately move back to Connecticut and start murdering.
Well, and he kept moving around. So
Yeah.
he might have charges in Virginia
Oh, so
and
true.
serve a little bit of time. And now he's in New Jersey and he's got charges. Then he goes to Florida, Georgia. These agencies, there's nothing they can do. We're not talking about federal charges on him yet.
Right.
So he's got different charges in different states and he may serve a couple months here, a couple days here or whatever, but they're not connecting this pattern of behavior.
All right. Well, just a few months later, June 18th, 2003, Janice Roberts, white female, 44 years old. She is a transgender woman from New Britain. She was last seen alive on that date, June 18th, 2003. She was observed getting into Howell's blue van outside of a Stop and Shop in Wethersfield. She was reported missing on June 24th, so just 6 days later. Howell later told an informant that he tried to engage Roberts in a sexual act and then realizing that she was a transgender woman, he strangled her, John.
Yep. Yeah. He decided, I don't want a man.
Yep.
He picked up what he thought was a woman. And Brandy, let me tell you, as a cop for over 4 decades, this is kind of hysterical. I've seen this happen over and over and over again where a trick tries to pick up a prostitute thinking it's a female, and it turns out to be a male. Most of the time, they're just totally embarrassed. They want to get out of there. They don't want people to have known what they've done. But this guy's a serial killer. So he flies into a rage, and what does he do? He strangles her or him to death. Because he's so mad. He's angry. And he even told somebody that later on. Hey, I thought this was a woman I was going to have sex with. Find out it's a guy. And I killed him. And so even though, he killed him that very same night, again, the body wasn't even reported missing till 6 days later. And this is one of the multiple times that witnesses are seeing Howell's blue van.
I was going to ask about that. We now have
Yep.
eyewitness seeing her, getting into the vehicle. And how many of these are we going to have, John, in this case of him being able and being seen and not trying to hide, right? His blue van. We talked about the number on the side of it, trying to get business, working as a gardener or
Yep.
plumber,
Lawn
whatever,
care.
lawn
Yep.
care, whatever he was doing. So we have eyewitnesses now.
But doesn't that remind you of one of the last serial killers that we covered that was driving? I want to say, was it a yellow Pinto
Oh,
with red
yes.
racing stripes?
Yes, and stayed in the neighborhood, drove
In
that car
LA.
all around. Yes,
Yeah, in
yes.
LA. He was killing women for years in a yellow Pinto with red racing stripes, and they law enforcement never put it together. They never put the
Unbelievable.
witness statements together. So it happens. It happens. And again, when you have different jurisdictions, even though this was 2003 and we're communicating much, much better by this time, still, when you have multiple jurisdictions, especially small agencies, they don't have that cross information. They're not doing briefings together. They're not sitting down and solving cases together. Every little agency kind of is working on its own. And that's what happens when you have an eyewitness that says, the last time I saw the victim, they were getting into a blue Econoline van. And that's critical information. But because law enforcement's not talking, that information never gets passed. And we're going to see that there's a lot more victims here.
So, when you talked about the profiling piece, we were covering a little bit of just his background, but what about the victimology? What are we picking up? I know we said sex workers. They have addiction issues. He has addiction issues. He was a transient. They're transients. What else are we picking up on the victimology piece?
Yeah, we're only 2 victims into it, but it's pretty obvious who he's going for. It's the women that he's been hanging around for years, the prostitutes that are out there, that are marginalized, that are working the streets. He's also, I think, looking for not just prostitutes, but ones that have an addiction maybe similar to his. So he can say, let's go do some crack together. Or, hey, I've got this. Let's go do it. We're going to go park somewhere. He knows this lifestyle, this kind of underbelly of society so well that it's easy for him to get in and out of neighborhoods, find these women, pick them up, and disappear with them. And he knows that simply promising them a ride or money or drugs is going to get him in the van.
That's right.
So it is a very easy target pool here. And, most of these serial killers that we see targeting this group, female prostitutes, have been, soliciting them, been with them, using and abusing them for quite a long time. And he falls right into that category. And he did it through multiple states, and I'm sure he continued to learn. What was his best line? What could he use? How could he entice him to get in? Which women aren't going to go with him? So, like anything else, kind of a learning curve, and he is back in his home state where he feels comfortable and picking up these vulnerable women and starts dumping them in the same location. So this is we look at victimology, that's pretty straightforward, but also his MO in profiling, that is pretty straightforward too. He knows where he's going to bury the victims. So we know that this is a plan. He knows he's going to take the women into his van. What do you call it? Murdermobile. I think
Yeah,
he
the
called it.
torture chamber
Yeah.
too, right? I mean,
Yeah, that's where he
he was
tortured him, but
very organized. Yes.
yeah, he had a murder mobile. Well, again, is he studying other serial killers? He's not the
Mm.
first. The highway strangler. Remember, he outfitted his van with
Oh yeah.
shackles, and he took the locks off the inside of the door. The toy box killer spent $100,000 outfitting his torture chamber. These guys are learning from each other, and he turned his Econoline van into a torture chamber and a murder van. So very, very organized, I think we want to say, up to this point.
Okay.
Even to the point that, some said, well, he kind of just buried him in shallow graves in this general area. No, it wasn't a general area. He referred to it by name as his garden. So
Yes.
even though authorities might think, wow, that's really spread out, it's actually a very confined wooded area between the
Mhm.
shopping behind the shopping mall, and it was his garden, so he knew that.
Yeah.
So from a profiling standpoint, we can really see the MO kind of coming together here. We see the crime scenes coming together, and certainly, like you pointed out earlier, the geography in and around New Britain and Southington areas of Connecticut.
So, John, I want to ask you a question real quick. So, he has this murder spree within, 10 months, 9
10
months,
months, yeah.
10 months. He was doing this well before, right? Picking up prostitutes, using drugs. He was already in
Yeah.
the activity and then moves back to Connecticut and what we think started killing there. Do you think he just started to hate women? I mean, why do you think he wasn't killing prostitutes back when he started picking them up? Do you just think he was evolving and eventually he just wanted to, like, that was it just wasn't excitement enough for him anymore and he has to take that excitement to another level? I mean,
the serial killers want to get that high, right? Whatever that high is. And we've talked about it. It's different with every killer. So some of them, the murder is the high. Some, the sex is the high. Some, the torture. Rodney Alcala, it wasn't the murder for him. It was strangling the victims till they were almost dead, reviving them and strangling them again. So for each killer, there is a different thing that gives them a high. I actually think that he might have started committing murders long before this.
Okay. I was wondering. Yep.
He might have started in other states, and there might be other bodies out there that aren't found. So many serial killers have what we call practice kills, and that's where they're kind of honing their skills, getting better. So maybe he honed his craft to the point where he actually did murder some other victims and said, now that I've gotten this far, I'm going to go back home and I'm going to start putting the victims where I can revisit them again, where I can see them, where I can visit my garden. So
Wow.
I think that there's a combination of things here. His high was harder to get. I mean, I've said this so many times. We already know he was a drug abuser. With drug abusers, what happens? They keep chasing the dragon. They keep chasing that high. Serial killers are the same way. They keep chasing that high, whatever it is for them. And when they can't fulfill that need anymore, they do it sooner. The time period shrinks. Maybe the gravity of it, is even bigger, and they want to achieve that high. And again, I think that's where we start seeing that the murders get closer together, and it gives us a better opportunity in law enforcement anyway to catch them. They make mistakes.
Well, I figured you were going to say you thought he started before. I kind of felt that same way too, or at least started doing like the practice kills, like you said. But let's talk about the garden a little bit because you mentioned this is where he would place the bodies of his victims. We talk about bigger areas, right? There's been uncovering of bones and bodies in all different areas, and they say, oh, there's a serial killer working here. But this was a wooded area behind a strip shopping mall. There were shallow graves. The bodies were decomposed, and the first discovery was in 2007, and then the final ones were actually not found to 2015, John. And this was over 15 acres. Why do you think he chose this place, John?
I think, well, one, he had easy access to it because if I remember right, he had at least one, if not multiple contracts for his landscaping business in and around that mall. So
Okay.
not only, was he familiar with the area, he was very familiar with it because he would go do his lawn care business in very close proximity to it. So it was nothing for him to be in and out of that wooded area, right?
Uh-huh.
You'd see the van by the shopping mall. And then
Uh-huh.
you'd see it behind the shopping mall. Then you might see you're not thinking anything of it. And if the police stopped him, what are you doing? Well, I have a contract right here. Go ask them. Go talk to them. They're a client of mine.
Yeah.
It turned out to be a perfect cover for him, right?
Wow.
Because he could go freely in and out of the area. And the wooded area was fairly large. It was larger than the 15 acres, because we're going to discover how the bodies were found later on. But it was a fairly large area, undeveloped, you might say, behind the shopping mall. And were the bones scattered over the 15 acres? Did animals do it? Did he dump them? Did he keep expanding his garden? We don't know. But remember, the killing started in 2003. The first body wasn't discovered till 2007, and the final bodies weren't discovered till 2015. So even though police knew bodies were in that area, they still took years to uncover all of them.
Wow. All right, John, let's go ahead and talk about our third victim, Diane Cusack, white female, 55 years old. She is a resident of New Britain. She disappeared in mid 2003. Police say the last contact with her was on July the 9th during a landlord tenant dispute. So I don't know, John, maybe if there was a witness, but they know that there was contact with her and the landlord. Her remains were found behind New Britain Shopping Plaza in 2007, and she was identified 4 years later in 2011. Now, she also had a substance abuse problem, had been out of contact with her family for years, had never been reported missing. I mean, John, perfect victim, right? Of somebody, nobody's looking for her.
Yeah, we talked about that victimology, drug user, sex worker, no family, no friends, no real contact. Obviously, she got into it with her landlord, probably didn't pay her rent. She probably went from, apartment to apartment, motel to motel. That's what we commonly see with many of these women. And because they don't have family, or maybe they're simply working with a pimp or something, he's not going to report them missing. And they're out of jail. They do shock probation. They may go to jail for 60 days and get out. They may get arrested. So you never know when these women are around. And poor Diane was never even reported missing at all. So we see 1, 2, 3 victims here. We're only halfway through 2003, and his killing spree is going to continue. Now, on each episode of True Crime and Wine, it wouldn't be True Crime and Wine without a wine break, would it? And we launched a new series of wines called The Investigation series. And today I want to talk about the third wine in that series, our True Crime and Wine branded wines, which is called Above Suspicion. And it's a sweet rosé that reveals refreshing Meyer lemon notes and light raspberry aromas. The mouth of it shows off flavors like strawberry and citrus. And Above Suspicion has a medium intensity. Let me tell you, I had some of this when I was out in Vegas not long ago when it was 105 degrees and I was by the pool. And it was absolutely wonderful. It's well balanced between sweetness and alcohol and acidity that it's almost suspicious. So Above Suspicion, our sweet rosé in the Investigation True Crime and wine series. And if I didn't mention it already, for every bottle purchased, $1 is donated to the DNA Doe Project, a 501(c) nonprofit dedicated to helping law enforcement name and identify remains using genetic genealogy. And Brandy and I have talked about how important DNA and genetic genealogy is today for us in law enforcement. So $1 of each bottle goes to that great group there.
Okay, John, we are on to our fourth victim, Nilsa Arizmendi, white female, 33 years old. On July 31st, 2003, a woman told police that her sister, 33-year-old Nilsa, had not been heard from in 7 days. So over a week, the sister told police that she was a heroin user and a sex worker who was living in a motel in Wethersfield along with her boyfriend. So I guess they do find the boyfriend, John, and he told investigators that he and Arizmendi had allowed Howell to stay overnight in their room and that he last saw her at 2:30 a.m. on July 25th when she got into Howell's van.
Yeah, there you've got it. It doesn't get any better of an eyewitness.
Right?
The boyfriend of the missing woman, who was probably also her pimp, we don't know, but probably so, because he allowed Howell to stay in the room and then for her to leave with him at 2:30 in the morning. So I mean that's pretty suspicious there. And she was last seen getting into his van. Her body, however, was not found. Remember, this is July 25th, 2003. Her body was not found until 2015, when police also recovered 3 other bodies. So the thing that kind of sticks out to me here is his last murder, as far as we know, was at least in or around July 9th.
Mm-hmm.
And because that's when the last victim had the dispute with the landlord. Now we're up to July 25th, and he's already getting another victim. So certainly he's getting a thrill out of this. He's getting a high, and he wants to keep getting that high.
Yeah, a little over 2 weeks. I mean, that's pretty unbelievable. Okay, let's talk about the profiling of the MO of him, John. We talked about the van, right? It's been seen, the blue van. It's been seen multiple times.
A couple of times now, right?
That's right.
As a matter of fact, the last victim said, I saw her getting into his van at 2:30 in the morning on the 25th and leaving. And what gets me, Brandy, is I actually looked up and I discovered that his van was painted on the side that said Quality Lawn Service, called Devin. Oh my gosh.
Even gave his name, huh?
I mean, I thought the yellow Pinto with red racing stripes I didn't think he could get any worse, right?
Yeah.
From the LA serial killer. I was like, wow, yellow Pinto, red racing stripes. How much more obvious? This guy painted his logo and his name and a number on the side of his murder mobile. Oh my gosh.
I mean, are you such a narcissist? Do you think you're just invisible and nobody is going to find you out? I mean, I don't know, John. What goes through their head?
They think they can get it. One, they think they're smarter than anybody else, and they think they can get away with it. Mm-hmm. And they start slipping up because they start giving into their urges, wanting to get that high. And so it's kind of a culmination, right? In law enforcement, we always call it the totality of circumstances, but it's all of those things coming together. And he's riding around in a blue Ford Econoline van with his name and number on it. And like I said, sometimes hiding in plain sight is the best place to be, because he did have clients all around that area, and he was servicing laws, so nobody thought it was out of place
Yeah.
to see Call Devin on a van that's driving around this area.
Well, in this van, John, where Quality Lawn Service Call Devin was written, he was raping and torturing these women and actually inside the van,
Yep.
strangling them, their other violence, dumping their bodies in that garden. What else are you picking up on his MO?
Yeah, I think he actually hit one of the victims in the head with a hammer. But he was pretty consistent. He would lure them into the van and murder them and then dump them in his garden. However, we do know, Brandy, that in one case, he kept the body in the van for 2 weeks, sleeping beside it. Yeah, yeah. Can you believe that? Sleeping beside it, and pretty sick. We don't know what he did, but
Mhm.
he didn't want to get rid of that body.
Oh, John, 2 weeks? Let's have a whole show about decomposition and what happens after 2 weeks of a body, but my
Yeah.
God, and the necrophilia, because I'm pretty positive. Why are you just gonna lay next to it? He's cuddling with it. I mean, who the hell knows, right?
Yeah, no, he did say he cuddled with it, and
Okay.
he didn't want to get rid of it. I couldn't find anywhere in there though, in that specifically said that he had sex with the women after they were dead.
Did he have sex with them before, all of them, or did he just pick them up and lure them? Do we know?
I mean, the assumption is since they were prostitutes, he had been picking up prostitutes, that he had sex with them, and I think they're going to find fairly significant DNA in just a little bit here. You know, when it finally all comes crashing down on him, it's actually DNA that is his undoing.
All right, so we're going on to Marilyn Gonzalez, white female, 26 years old, mother of 2 children, went missing in 2003 after she left her home in Waterbury. Her body was found behind that shopping plaza in New Britain on April 28th, 2015.
Yeah, again, 12 years later. 12
Yeah.
years later, it took them to find the body. And again, you know, we don't know a in-depth or detailed background on this particular victim. Folks say, oh, well, you know, she couldn't have been a prostitute or a sex worker. She had 2 children and she had a residence, but you know, we've seen that in all different types of situations. So we're not exactly really sure what her background was, but he hasn't changed his victimology very much, right? He stayed pretty consistent with sex workers that he could easily pick up, that he could lure in his van, drug abusers that he could promise drugs to and get in the van. So I don't know why his MO would have changed at this point. You know, he was very opportunistic in luring them in. And like, we haven't talked about this a lot, Brandy, but these killers put miles on their vehicle. They spend hours. They enjoy the search for the prostitutes. Now, is it hard to find them? No, you can usually find them in 5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Once you know where the prostitutes are in your community, you drive there and pick them up. That's not what they're looking for. They will drive around for hours looking at one prostitute, looking at another, talking to one, talking to another, until they find the perfect one, the one they want. There's something that turns them on about that particular person at that minute. So it's not like somebody would just go, oh, I'm going to go pick up the first prostitute that I'd see. These guys spend hours trolling for these prostitutes. The prostitutes in every city, not only in America, but all across the world. The areas where they work are called prostitute strolls. The girls, they know that's where they can work. They know that's where the tricks know that's where they work. So it's supply and demand. Everybody knows that, hey, that's where, we can get what we want, do what we want, make our money, have sex, whatever their need is. And these guys will go from area to area, girl to girl, and just keep checking and checking and checking on these women until something strikes them. I remember Carl Watts in a quote for him, you were with scores of women. Why did you kill the ones you did? And he said, I could see evil in their eyes. So whatever it is that turns them on, one of the serial killers, the alphabet killer that we covered, he would rape, have sex with, literally probably hundreds of women. And then if he found out their initials, first and last name were the same, that's what his trigger was. And he killed him. So with this guy, we know he's highly mobile. He lures them in, sexually assaults them, or at least has sex with them in the van, strangles most of them. One thing we haven't talked about, though, that I haven't discussed yet, is post-mortem dismemberment. So with some of these girls, and we don't know why, right? He will remove their fingertips or remove different parts of their body. And we think it's kind of to avoid detection or identification. And he will place the fingertips or other body parts in trash cans or dumpsters, just alongside the road, wherever he sees it. And then he will take the rest of the victim and dispose of them in those shallow graves in his garden. So
I'm thinking detection. I'm thinking spreading it out, right? Harder to detect.
But why? Do you think he's starting to get paranoid? Because this is something new.
Yeah, I do. I also wonder if the cutting of the fingertips, again, like, why take the body then back to this garden? Why not just keep disposing across the city and in trash cans? Why bring it back? And in fact, why bring them all back to this garden? So it's almost like he wants to keep a piece of what he's doing and then just try to dispose of the others along the other pieces along the way. But it's almost like his souvenir, in my opinion, to keep close to
the
him.
body.
Yeah, whatever he's taking back to the garden.
No, it might be, but why take the fingerprints off and then dispose of them in trash cans and dumpsters? That's not his MO.
A thrill.
Right? The LA serial killer that we covered, who was a garbage man, disposed of them in dumpsters all in his neighborhood, and would get rid of body parts and things like that. We had another guy, I think it was the Kansas City butcher, that simply put them in garbage bags and set them out for the city, and the city took care of it. Why is this guy cutting fingertips off of women? I gotta think he's getting paranoid. Maybe it was by being seen by Armis's pimp or boyfriend. Maybe it was being seen by somebody else, but this is a very different behavior, and I got to think that something occurred, and all of a sudden he's starting to get paranoid, but not paranoid enough. He still thinks his garden is perfectly fine, and nobody's going to discover it.
John, what about possibly DNA under the fingernails? I mean, maybe.
It could be. No, very good. Very good. I mean, 2003, we're well into the age of DNA, and we're going to see it continue to
and
evolve.
He's doing this in a van, a small space. There's probably a lot happening in there, scratching, fighting back. I mean, there's probably a lot of DNA sitting under the fingernails of these ladies. So that's kind of what I first thought when I read that.
There's probably a lot of DNA in the van.
Everywhere. Can you imagine? Oh my gosh. Treasure trove.
Yeah, that's probably not a place that you want to put down that third seat bed and sleep in, Brandy.
No. All right. Well, these poor victims, Sean, we know they're female. We know they're prostitutes. We know they're drug users. We know they're in and around New Britain and Southington area where he's comfortable. They're lured by money, drugs, and rides, like you said. He knows what it's going to take to get them into that van. Anything else you want to mention about these victims?
And I'm not sure, when they're in the van, does he reveal that he's going to kill them? Does he
Mhm.
simply strangle him? Is that what causes the fight? And you could be exactly right. You know, if he's evolving to the point where, what was that, between July 9th and July 25th, you know, you're talking
Yeah.
2 weeks that he's killing and killing and killing. Maybe he's devolving at this point,
Mm.
and there's more of a struggle, more of a fight
Yep.
before he strangles him. And you're right, maybe they're scratching, they're cutting,
Mhm.
and he wants to get rid of
Yeah.
their fingertips or their fingernails or something, or get rid of the fingerprints. But
Yeah.
again, by this point, look at the DNA that's in that van.
Yes. I mean, I guess he's thinking that maybe that's going to be their, again, and he's sexually
Well,
assaulting most of them, right?
that's
There's
why I go
DNA
back.
there too. So I
Well,
don't
that's why I
know.
go back to paranoia.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, anytime I see removal of fingertips, I go back to paranoia, because they're trying, or burning, when they burn the
Hmm.
fingertips off, they're trying to delay authorities in identifying the body.
Yeah. Okay, John. Well, we have another victim, unfortunately. White female, 23 years old, Joyvaline Martinez. She went missing on October 10th, 2003, but was not reported missing until March 29th of 2004. So, about 5 months after she goes missing. So suspicion started to arouse when she did not show up for her own birthday party. She was last spotted in her hometown of East Hartford, where she'd lived with her mother. So she was a track star. She was an athlete in high school. And at the time of her disappearance, John, she was unemployed. So probably got into drugs. Her life changed probably a little bit going into her 20s. Her remains were some of the first to be recovered from that shopping plaza area, the Garden, in 2007. And she was finally identified in 2013.
Yeah, that goes back to the DNA we just talked about, right?
Yeah.
During this period of time, there is a huge evolution in the use of DNA, in the identification of DNA. You know, we started it in the 90s. It finally got approved by multiple courts, late 90s, early 2000s, and then it just boomed from there, right?
Hmm.
The technology that we use, DNA that used to take months to get back to the law enforcement agency and cost a fortune, now became very affordable, very quick, and stuff like that. So I think that during this period was especially important for DNA, and it's going to tie him to some of these crimes, just like we see today, with DNA, with genealogy, the
Yes.
technologies that we're using, the implementation of AI is going to help us link so many unknown victims
Yeah.
to their killers.
Yeah.
So many bodies where we can recover enough DNA to test it, to get some
Yeah.
genealogy from it, is going to be a tremendous help moving forward. And it
Mhm.
certainly was a help in this case back in the 2000s.
John, I do wonder about the AI and just the evolution that we talk about all the time about genealogy and how so many cases that have gone 30, 40, 50 years are being solved. I know, and as a police officer, and I just know because of research, that there are backups of sexual assault cases, test kits, things that have not been tested. I would really like to see what that looks like in our future, to be able to go to the states that don't have all the resources to go through all of these, and start bringing some awareness and justice to these women and men that are assaulted. Because, John, they could go years
Yeah.
to wait for justice. So I hope that along with solving these crimes and murders, that we're able to start chipping away at some of these other things that need to be addressed within our system.
Well, and I think the way technology is improving, we're going to see that. Right,
I hope so.
we're going to see that in our lifetime. Not just DNA, not just genealogy, not just AI, but all of it together. We're already solving more cases, and we've covered serial killers that were captured off of not their DNA, but their family's DNA. So
Mm-hmm.
as that database continues to grow, we're going to be able to identify many, many more of these perpetrators. It really right now it's a matter of resources, time, money, investigators, to put it all together,
That's right.
right?
Yeah,
And do it. But I really think it's all going to come together, and you're going to see justice for a lot of these people.
it's great. All right, we've got another victim, unfortunately, John. Mary J. Menard, a white female, 40 years old, mother of two from Waterbury. Now, John, this is a little different. We have a former addict. She turned her life around, became a substance abuse counselor, then goes missing in New Britain in October of 2003. Her remains are found behind the shopping plaza in 2007. So, John, was she not out there prostituting and not addicted? She was recovering and maybe in the area. What do we know about Mary Jane?
Yeah, we don't know a whole lot. We
Okay.
don't know if she, kind of fell off the wagon with the drugs or the
Okay.
prostitution. She could have been out there helping the women, trying to
Yeah.
get them into programs. We see that a lot. If you work prostitution areas, you will see unusual vehicles, unusual people. And I cannot tell you how many times I've stopped them and they've had identification and they've had their business cards. And they honestly weren't out there soliciting the prostitutes. They were trying to give them help.
Yeah.
Or maybe give their family help, or get them into a program, or give them food. But in my experience, nearly 100% of the time, the girls just rejected it. They just absolutely rejected it. It didn't matter if they had kids, didn't matter if they lived in and out of motels. And it's not that they wanted help, but I had so many girls tell me, Brandy, over the years, I don't deserve it.
Yeah.
I don't deserve a better life. I deserve to be on the street. I deserve to be a drug addict. I deserve to be in jail. I deserve to be beat. I deserve to be I cannot tell you how many times I heard that from these women that would try to get help. But yeah, there are numerous agencies and individuals out there trying to provide assistance, but often it's refused.
Yeah. And I also, John, maybe is a feeling of defeat in some of that they've gone this far and there's no going back to whatever that normal life was at whatever point in their lives. So,
well, it really it
difficult.
depends culturally too.
Sure.
I have seen that in the Native American community, there's no way they can turn back.
Yeah.
They believe that they will never be accepted back into the tribe, back into the family. And they're just, no, I'm not going to go back. They are never going to accept me. I'm never going to get better. I'm never going to recover. So yeah, it is really wild. And I hear people all the time, oh, well, the girls are the victims. If they're victims, they're probably victims of their circumstances. Right? Maybe sexual abuse at home or assault at home or drug use or whatever. But the vast majority of these women absolutely refuse help from just about every agency.
Yeah. Okay, so we talked about the victimology and the profiling piece of this. A little organization, a little disorganization. We're starting to see the postmortem dismemberment. We know he's killing them in his van, dumping them in the woods, getting rid of their bodies along the way in different disposals, but then using the garden as his shallow grave, strangulation, and a hammer. Anything else we need to know about the profiling?
Yeah, I think what sticks out to me is the shallow grave in the garden. Does he not want to take time to dig a deep grave that only he knows where it is, where the body parts aren't going to be scattered by animals, the weather, it's not going to deteriorate? Does he think he doesn't have enough time? Or is it that he feels so safe in his garden that he can simply cover the girls up, right? with a little bit of
Yeah.
dirt, a little bit of leaves. So that's what's kind of intriguing to me. It would seem like if he wants to keep them preserved, he would dig deep graves and bury them deep. Or maybe he wants to get access to them again.
Well, I thought about that too. And I also thought about the fact of when you plant seeds, you don't dig very deep. I mean, when you put things in your garden, unless
Yeah,
it's something like a tree or something with a long stem, you're not typically digging very deep. So I don't know, maybe it's just
that's
creature of
freaky,
habit,
Brandy.
right? Creature of habit and what he's used to doing in his job. I don't know.
Gardening or planting, I
Yeah.
never thought of that, but that
Mm,
is kind of freaky. Was he almost planting seeds?
mhm, but I mean, he
Knowing his
called it his
background.
garden. He's called it his
Yeah,
garden,
no,
right?
he
Like full praise.
definitely did.
Yeah.
So he was a landscaper and he called it, so he took ownership of
Mhm.
that property. And I think that's significant.
Yeah.
I think that's important. He took ownership of it. I can't believe it, but I've actually got another big announcement. Recently we announced the launch of 6 new true crime and wine brands, and that has been just fantastic. But earlier this year, I took a trip to Italy, to Tuscany, with my wine club, and it was just amazing. We had wine lunches, wine dinners, we toured historic Tuscany. Absolutely wonderful. But after a lot of calls and emails from our fans who said, when are we going to do true crime and wine in Italy? Well, I talked to our trip coordinators and we're going to make it happen in November. Yeah, November of this year, November 26th. We're going to be traveling to Tuscany. We're going to do a special true crime and wine week. We're going to have a true crime tour guide take us around Florence. And Florence has just tons of history, from the Medici family all the way up to the Monster of Florence in the 1980s. We're also going to have a special guide take us through Siena, which has been the site of many, many assassinations over the years. We're going to do a cooking class in Florence, and of course, many wine tastings, wine lunches, wine dinners. It's all going to be fantastic. True crime and wine in Italy. If you want to go, just email us at truecrime@casarowines.com. True crime at casarowines.com. That's CASSARO, wines, plural. Simply shoot us an email. We'll forward that on to the tour group that is producing this, and they'll send you some information. No obligation, anything else. They'll just send you some information. And when we get the group filled, which is going to be a very small and private group, I promise you, then we'll book the trip doing true crime and wine in Tuscany. A bit.
Okay, so we get into the investigation. So now he's being questioned after Arizmendi's disappearance. This is the one with the boyfriend that was in the hotel. This was in April of 2004. But after being released, he flees to Virginia.
Right.
So following his arrest on unrelated charges in North Carolina, police seized his van. They started discovering several of the seat cushions had been removed, but blood from 2 people was found soaked into the floor of the van underneath some carpet. All right, so now we've got some DNA and some blood.
Yeah, and we see this pattern of behavior, right?
Right.
He was questioned in Connecticut. He probably panicked. He said, I got to get out of here. It's no longer my comfort zone. And he flees to Virginia, then North Carolina, maybe some other states during this time. But it was a lucky chance arrest on unrelated charges that they seized his van, and must have thought something's really weird here, because they search it and it's a lawn care van, and yet there's blood in the back. They, of course, test the blood, human blood, and they do get some DNA. So now they go back to Connecticut and say, hey, what crimes y'all have open here? And they immediately point to that one, or, Arizmendi's, and they go to their relatives and take blood from them. It was a 99% match. That's enough to get a warrant. And they also found in the van a half dozen videotapes of Howell that they could identify having what law enforcement said was bizarre sex with women, but that the videos were intentionally shot in a way that their faces were not visible. This gets back to that whole planning organization. So not only is he planning to have sex with them, he is going to actually videotape them, and he knows how to do it in such a way that he's not getting their faces on tape. So if anybody finds it, which authorities did.
Yeah, and I almost want to say those probably weren't his first 6 tapes. I think he's got this down and has probably taped himself, maybe not in this capacity at first, but I think he probably had practice doing that before he actually started videotaping the murders, or the women he was going to murder after having sex. Okay, thankfully this guy is arrested, John, in Hampton, Virginia on May 15th, 2005. Because Arizmendi's body was yet to be found, Hal was charged at the time with first-degree manslaughter.
Right, because she's missing. They've got a missing person report. They've got blood from her, and so they don't have a body, though. So we know the offense was committed in Connecticut. We know that he was found in North Carolina in another arrest where the van was seized. He then was released and fled to Virginia, but fortunately was caught there. So now he's charged with first-degree murder and charged with tampering with a witness after threatening another inmate not to testify against him from what he's said in jail. So he's got a couple of charges here. Now, it's not till January 2007 that the trial begins. And I had never heard of this. He entered an Alford plea, and I don't know if that's a Connecticut law or whatever. I never did have a chance to look it up. To first-degree manslaughter, meaning he didn't admit to the crime. I guess it's like a no contest, but conceded that the prosecution had enough evidence that a conviction would be likely. So I guess in Connecticut, you can make this plea and it's like a misdemeanor here in Texas.
Yeah, I've heard of the
right?
Alford plea. I don't know what states it cross. I have heard of the Alford plea before.
Yeah, so, on most misdemeanors, you can plead no contest. You're not saying I'm guilty, but you're saying I'm not going to contest this charge. So, whatever you're going to give me, usually a fine or community service. But in his case, we're talking about murder, and he says, I'm not going to contest it. So go ahead. And at sentencing, he's sentenced to 15 years for the manslaughter, but still he insisted, I didn't kill her. The bloodstains were from a fight we had, and it wasn't even between me and her. Her and her boyfriend were in the van, which, it could have been. Remember, they slept together in the apartment. Then he was seen with her in the van, whatever. And he even tried to get his Alford plea thrown out, claiming he only entered it because a public defender pressured him to do it, but the judge didn't buy it.
Yeah.
The judge says, no, your blood's in there, her blood's in there, we can't find her, and sentenced him to 15 years on first-degree manslaughter. Not very much, but at least he's in jail, right?
Right. So now we've got in 2007, August, a bow hunter seeking a new place to hunt discovered a human skull and alerted police.
And this isn't very long after he was sentenced.
That's right. It's not.
Right? So, this was not very long at all after he was sentenced, and it was just by luck that this bow hunter walking the wooded area found a human skull and called the police. Officers, of course, responded and began searching the area, and what they discover.
More victims. More victims. Now they're going to start
decomposing bodies.
Yeah, wow. Now they're going to start uncovering all of this.
And the autopsies revealed strangulation, blunt force trauma, and removal of body parts from some of the victims. So obviously, the bodies are dumped in the same location. The bodies have the same type of cause of death. The bodies have the same types of body part removal. What do we think? It's obviously the same person, right?
Right.
We've got a serial killer here. And this is in 2007 that this starts.
Yep. And then we're going to fast forward to 2015. More bodies are discovered, bringing the total in the garden to at least 7. Now, in June of 2015, the body of Marilyn Gonzalez, who went missing in 2003, she is then identified. And also in 2015, police reconsider Howell as a suspect after learning he did landscaping around the strip center near his garden, and his van was seen in multiple locations where victims disappeared. You know, John, I thought about this too. He's putting bodies behind a shopping mall. And how many times have we talked about serial killers and thought about serial killers that are scoping out mall parking lots, right? Or waiting and, following someone inside and then waiting for them outside. And like you said, he moved his van around this place. People were used to seeing it, and he was hiding in plain sight.
Yeah, now they put it together. His van was at the shopping mall. Why? Because he had contracts in and around the area. The van was also now seen in prostitute areas. So you have the van in the shopping mall, which is right in front of where his garden was located. You have the van in the prostitution areas. You now have dead women, prostitutes that are being identified after being found in this garden. DNA is finally linking them so we can identify them. So it's not hard putting this case together, right?
Right.
He's frequenting prostitutes. His van is being seen with prostitutes. Prostitutes are found dead in his garden. The garden is right behind where he works, doing the landscaping. So it took years.
Yeah.
Remember, he was killing in 2003. Wasn't convicted of the first manslaughter till 2007, and that's when the garden was discovered. And we're all the way up to 2015 now, when we're finding these other bodies and tying him to the case.
So we know Nilsa, Melanie, Danny, Diane, Marilyn, Mary Jane, and Joyvelyn were all victims and found in the garden. 8 years span, John, but they have found these women and been able to identify him. And then he gives himself his own nickname. He tells his cellmate,
I hate this.
Right?
Don't you hate that when they give
don't
themselves...
give yourself your own nickname. I mean, people have to nickname you, okay? All right. So even if you're he wanted to name
I hate when
notoriety.
Football players do that too.
Yeah, like notoriety, right?
Yeah.
He wanted something, but he actually described the Sick Ripper, which is what he called himself. He said that was a monster inside of him, and that's what he described it as, the Sick Ripper.
Yeah, he actually told that to a cellmate.
Yeah.
And how many times do these guys talk? How many times do they talk? It is incredible. Remember, in fact, the dialogue, what we had between Herbert Mullins, and Ed Kemper, as they were both on death row in San Quentin. I think it's just hysterical. But anyway, these guys talk. He also told an inmate during a card game that he kept one of the women's bodies in his van for 2 weeks. He said it was too cold to bury her outside. Okay. What he probably meant was the ground was too hard.
Yeah.
Right? That's probably what he meant, is the ground was too hard. And even though he's only digging his shallow van, he slept next to her, Brandy. We know that.
And called the victim his baby. Am I reading this right, John? Oh, my God. Gross.
He later cut the tips off her fingers. I don't understand this. The only one I've seen this. Dismantled her bottom jaw and disposed of the body in actually a different state. So that means he kept her bottom jaw with him as he was traveling around to these different states.
So
no
is
idea.
that okay? So the first thing I thought of was identifying by teeth. And
what about the top jaw?
I know. And then did she bite him It's
Yeah.
did he get angry? I don't know. Like those are the things that come to my head. Okay.
I have no idea. The fingertips I can kind of assume.
Yeah.
But bottom jaw, I don't know.
Weird.
Anyway, on November 17th, Howell is sentenced in those other murders, Brandy. Okay. 6 consecutive life sentences, 360 years total, and he pled guilty to the murders of Cusick, Martinez, Menard, Gonzalez, Caminini, and Roberts. Why did he plead guilty? They had a lot of DNA. Yeah. They had a lot of witness statements, and he decided to confess. And then in a moment of, oh, I'm sorry, which I never believe because these guys have no empathy whatsoever. He apologized to the families of the victims. He called his actions monstrous, cowardly, and selfish. And he said that he told the court, I deserve a slow, painful death. Well, yes, you do. And yes, I agree to all of that. But it doesn't help these victims' families.
I know.
And it doesn't help bring their girls back.
I know.
Right?
Right.
So to me, how empathetic is this guy? How sincere is this guy? These are horrible acts that he did. He did have an inner monster that compelled his brutality. I firmly believe that. Did he have impulse control? Of course he did. But he also had no empathy. And he tried to cover up his crimes and conceal these murders. Conceal these murders in his garden. So he was a true monster that kept a garden of victims. Now, as we put a cork in this edition of the True Crime and Wine podcast, I want to remind all of our listeners, you can follow us on our socials at JJ True Crime and Wine. You can find out where we're going to do our live shows and when the next podcast is it's coming up, and communicate with us. Email us at truecrime@casarowines.com. So you can get in touch with us there. So that pretty much wraps up our business for the day. We got the podcast in the can here, and I want to thank my co-host, Brandy Diamond, for joining me on this journey, and our producer, Lauren Bedsole, back in the Corsicana Command Center for making the show possible. And I invite you to join us for our next episode, where this fascinating serial killer would take women to various abandoned houses in his city. He'd strangle them and leave them to be found by whoever wandered in. I'm John Matthews, and thanks for joining us today on True Crime and Wine. Salud.